Please help me welcome the writer-director of Dom Hemingway, Richard Shepard, and please help me welcome Demian Bachir. So, Richard,
Yes.
you must be really happy the way it looks.
It does look really good. I told Elvis that when people don't like your movie, they tell you, I really loved the way it looked.
You must be really happy the way it looks. Anyway, one of the things I really like about your work is you love people who can't help talking. I mean, they get themselves in trouble because they won't shut up. Where does that come from?
I think it's because I won't shut up. No, I like people who, for whatever reason, when I write dialogue, it just kind of comes out and then it just keeps coming out and keeps coming out. And then I just figure if I can get the character into trouble by talking, it will continue to be entertaining. And certainly with Dom, I wrote it without an outline. I just started with that monologue, and I finished the monologue, and I was like, well, I just want to see this guy do anything. I would just literally, and I wrote an entire other second half of the movie where Fontaine doesn't die in the car crash, and he hires Dom to make sure that Paulina, who's now auditioning for movies, gets the part. I mean, I was like, what? I don't even know. And then I wrote, so I could just keep writing Dom forever. While I'm alone, bankrupt, living in a studio apartment. No, people are going to want to see this.
Well, Demian, what was your first meeting with Richard like? What was your conversation like about the character with him?
He sent me a picture from my villa in the south of France. A selfie. Here's your director.
With a bottle of wine.
Meet your director. Yeah. He was very kind to invite me to be a part of this film when I was getting ready to do a pilot for The Bridge. That is a series that we're doing right now. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Spread the word. And I was so excited about that, when, you see, I always thought that I wanted to become famous or well-known or better known because of this type of opportunities, to have a director such as Richard to actually send me his script and invite me over to be a part of this. That was a privilege that I will always be thankful for. And when I read it, I thought it was crazy. I thought it was incredibly, beautifully crazy. It was a roller coaster of many, many things. And the first thing I thought was that being a big fan of Jude Law's work, having seen him on stage in New York playing Hamlet, I thought this is perfect for Jude, and this is something that he has not done before. He has never done in the past. And I just wanted to be a part of that, doing anything. And then when I read, thinking of Mr. Fontaine, I thought, this is incredible, And then I had to go to the south of France, to Rimont, and London. No, please, no, forget about it. So I was really, really lucky, and it was a fantastic experience.
But also, too,
and I want to just say that originally Mr. Fontaine was written as a Brit. Oh. And Jude was, I was very lucky with my cast in their participation creatively in the process of making this movie. And Jude in particular had a number of ideas, and one of them, Lester, the young kid whose club Dom goes to in the second half of the movie, was originally written as Lester's father. And Jude was like, I think it should be Lester's son. And he read the Fontaine part, and he said, I think you should think about casting someone who's not British, because it will open up your movie a little bit. Oh. And so we had a list of actors, which we hadn't even really gone to, and suddenly that was like, oh, that's totally interesting. Like, why not? Yes, it will. He's absolutely right. And then Demian's name came up, and I was like, man, that would be awesome. And then Damien's like, I know that you wrote it for a Brit, and I'm a Mexican, and I would like to play him as a Russian.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, for some weird reason, it made sense. And And then, of course, Richardson, and I forget it, please. I have enough problems now. Why? How? And then we had this fantastic exchange of communication, long, beautiful emails about this and that and how this would work. And then I knew that I met this fantastic acting coach from Russia when I was 17, and I was working in a national theater company in Mexico City, Eugene Lazariev. And then I heard that he was in Los Angeles teaching, and I found him. And we met again, and he remembered me and my family, from back, from a long time ago. And we got together and we worked on it, and I told him, listen, you have to help me with it. And that's how it happened. So I was really, really fortunate to find him.
Well, what's fun about that character too is that you play him. He never stops smiling. It's like you wondering what's going on with this guy. He seems to be having a great. He can't do anything without grinning. Where did that come from for the character?
It's because he knows something that no one else knows. It's something that Richard and I wanted to give to the character. You know, this specific characteristic about being so calm and happy and done. You know, he was not going to be in organized crime anymore, and he had everything set up, and thanks to Dom. And then we wanted him to be elegant, sophisticated, and really, really, really
We were
cool.
trying to not put him into a position where he would get angry at Dom.
Yeah.
Because then, who knows where that's going to go. You know, it was like, in a way, we were purposely like watching Dom get it. You keep thinking, okay, you got away with that, and then he says something else, and you're like, how long is this guy going to last before, you're eating, rabbit for dinner?
But I just wanted to, because part of that, I mean, putting Fontaine in that position where he seems to be like smiling some secret murder he just committed or something, makes him seem all the more dangerous. I mean, because Dom's this guy, you know everything he's thinking at every single moment.
Yeah, that's what we wanted. You know, we didn't want to go into the obvious direction in making him, really tough or even loud or anything. We talked about it for hours and hours and hours.
It was fun to rehearse, and we actually tried versions where Fontaine gets angrier, and it just always, in our rehearsals, we got to that villa 5 days early and drank them out of rosé, but we also managed to rehearse slightly. And it was really great because that big scene in the monkey room, that's on page, a 9-page scene. And I said to the actors, guys, I'm going to film 9-minute takes. We're not going to break this up into little clusters. We're going to handhold it, and we're going to start at the first line and end at the last line, and we're going to shoot it all in one day. And we ended up rehearsing so much that we were actually able to do that. And by the end of the day, I saw something that I don't think I've ever witnessed before. Like, literally, Jude was so exhausted from giving that much. And literally, everyone just kind of got into a group hug. It was incredible because we got to have this front row seat to this actors doing this amazing stuff. It was a lot of fun.
I just found myself thinking as I was watching Fontaine, thinking back a little bit to the Matador and Pierce's character. But that character, you wouldn't see him fall apart. I mean, you know that confidence is just a veneer, that there's really something insane going on. But you chose not to show it here, which I thought was a really interesting, dramatic decision to make.
There's a whole nother movie. I mean, I wrote Damien an 8-page letter with Fontaine's history. The fact is, there's a whole nother movie there. If there wasn't, we kept talking about the sequel that Fontaine will just have this metal thing. We're just like, there was surgery, it worked out.
Well, one thing now, they can do anything in Crimea right now, so clearly he could be fixed.
Exactly.
But what I was thinking about, too, in this is that you write these movies, first of all, you write these comic thrillers, because the idea of sort of getting comedy out of what's really incredibly tense and dangerous situations is something that appeals to you, doesn't it?
I think it makes for fun movies. It's just, I feel like if you can, I love a good crime thriller. Sure. And I tend to write my movies without thinking about humor at all.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't even realize The Matador was a comedy till like 9 weeks into editing. I mean, honest, I'm not even joking. And
You must be really happy the way it looked.
very happy. No, but I write from character, and to me, I just truly felt Dom on all his complexity and failure. And it ends up being funny, you know, and it ends up making hopefully the crime element can keep the engine moving and allows you to have these characters that if it was just a comedy or just a circumstance, I'm not sure I would have the story behind it to make a 90-minute movie. So it gives me an opportunity to allow me to write these characters and do these things because I know ultimately I've got some story going. But to be honest with you, since I don't write by outline, half the time I don't really even know what the story is. And some people can accuse me of that and say, well, wait a second, the movie takes a shift, there's a tone. And I'm like, no, that seems like real life. Like suddenly I want to spend time here, and suddenly I want to spend time there. And so that's just sort of how I write. And I used to write by outline, and it was, I mean, just literally atrocious. Really, I'm not kidding. Like, it was just like, as soon as I stopped caring how you got to A and to B, and actually realized that actually the journey from A to B is more interesting than either A or B.
I just feel like for you, it's putting these people in the room more than anything else.
I love putting people in the room.
And actually, just watching your documentary on one of the greatest actors of all time, and just sort of the way he talked about character, and the way he just would inhabit the room, that sort of felt like that's the way you worked. I mean, your movie about John Cazale.
I did this documentary about John Cazale, who was Fredo in The Godfather, and John Cazale was his belief about acting is how I feel I'm so lucky when I get to work with really good actors, because he believed in character, and he believed that there was not a finite answer.
And also,
And
but
I
not
love
consciously
that.
looking for comedy either, because
No, and he's so funny all the time, but he plays it straight. And I think that, like, how do you make something funny? There's two ways of doing it. Here is an intentional laugh, and of course there are plenty. But if the characters don't see it as an intentional laugh, then it's far funnier. I mean, Richard Grant gets a huge laughs in this movie by just reacting to what Dom is doing. You know what I mean? He's just sitting there going, "Holy fuck, is Damien going to kill him?"
but also the way you've written, they're kind of like a married couple.
Oh, I know. Well, the fact is that I wrote the part for Richard E. Grant without knowing him. And I just love him. And I was like, where has he been? Subsequently, he's been on Girls, but that thanks to me. Not that he gives me any thanks at all for. But I wrote it for him, and then I told Jude that I wanted him in the movie, and Jude goes, well, that's a very strange choice. I love him, but how are we friends? And I'm like, well, that'll be the perfect thing. He should keep his normal voice. He shouldn't try to be South London. It's just like the idea that these two very mismatched people could be friends is perfect. I buy that more than if he was just trying to be something. And so we kind of created this character, and the two of them just had this great chemistry. And it's sort of like, I think, and you could probably talk about this too. I mean, actors at a certain point realize, like, if we're supposed to be friends, it helps if we can be friends. Yes, we can fake it, but even if it's for 3 months, we are going to be friends. And it shows. It does.
Does that make sense to you, Damien, the idea of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a whole deal of new things that you build throughout the process. And that was something that I was looking forward to, having grown in the theater, working with British actors. That was like a dream, because it's all about the work. And what we found in el trabajo de mesa, as we call it, sitting down and reading and understanding and this and that, it was like a workshop for any actor, just to be there. It was fantastic. And then Richard was conducting the whole operation gracefully, and it's really, really weird how those things connect, how people that don't know each other very well, they end up creating this chemistry on the screen. Of course, for example, Madalena Ganea, who plays Paulina, you know, there's this beautiful woman, and then you have to be like in love with this person.
That was so hard for you.
It was really hard for me.
That's why I call it acting, right? Because
and make it believable, you know, that a girl like her can fall in love with this thing. And of course, if you're filthy rich, yes, you can do it. Yeah, you know, that helps.
But also, too, I mean, and I wanted to ask you about this because a lot of stuff we see you play here, you have this kind of world beater's confidence. You know, I mean, you basically you're standing like, you know, there's a string pulling you up, and every time you walk into a room, you make an entrance. You must have loved the idea of getting to play it that way, too, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted that to be clear and perfect. And then we contrasted the whole thing when we go into the pool, because that's when you see this guy's history in all the tattoos that he has in his body. And that is something that is really, really clear in the Russian, you know, organized crime or mafia. Everything that you're made of is tattooed in your body. So that was really great that we didn't see any of that when he was, you know, wearing his tuxedo up until he went in the pool.
I can't not talk to you about that first scene. And tell the audience about the way you decided to play it.
Well, when weirdly, as I said, it was weirdly easy to write that scene. When I met Jude, I met him in London at
Wait a second, it was easy to write that scene. You can't just walk away from that. What was so easy about writing that scene?
I just was like, my cock should be in the Louvre. I mean, it was very simple to write. It's got its own wing.
That's not what I hear, but anyway.
Hey, nurse. So when I met Jude in London, I flew out for literally 24 hours to meet Jude and try to convince him to be in the movie. And we went to a pub and caused some trouble. And he said to me, I want to film, if we do this, I want to film the first scene of the movie on the first day. And I don't want to meet any of the crew other than the key people I have to meet. And I want to walk on the set naked. And I said, really? And he's like, yes, I just want to show everyone on this crew the way I feel about this movie, which is this is not what you've seen from me before on every level. And we shot it in a pre-production day, on a camera test day. We built this little 3-walled set, and they were like, Jude's walking, and I'm like, I hope he's got some clothes on, because he's walking down his, and then he showed up on the stage and took off his robe and stood on his mark, and we started shooting, and an hour later we were done. And it was great because it really did set a I mean, everyone's like, wow, this is going to be an interesting movie.
But also, too, I mean, we're looking at him, and he doesn't look like Jude Law. I mean, you know, you're saying he put on 20 pounds of muscle, and you can see part of it is it's this guy who basically cannot hide anything about himself.
Well, we both really wanted to sort of change the way Jude looked. And not just by a makeup thing, but just on every possible level. So from the beginning, I was like, I want to see your receding hairline, and I want something on your face. And so we fought a lot about the Lemmy hair on his face. But eventually, we kind of got that, and Jude said that he'd learned a trick from Jon Voight. Because I guess you movie stars just hang out. Jon Voight said to take if you take the nipple of a baby bottle and cut it into a tiny, tiny little donut and then stick it in your nose, you can breathe through it and it will distort your nose just a little. And so Jude has it in his nose, and that's why it's just slightly imperfect, which was great because it took all of 1 second to shove up there. So he had fake teeth. We would have these discussions on like how yellow his nicotine
Nicotine-stained
yeah, I
teeth
mean, just
were?
literally like hours of like, that's too yellow, and we're like, yay, we've made the right decision. And then we had a suit made that I purposely made very tight, very tight, and the tailor just couldn't do it. It was against everything he believed in. So we ended up with like 6 tries before we were like, no, it's not tight enough. Not tight enough. And then Jude kept gaining weight, and finally it just grabbed him right where it needed to and never let go.
Well, what's so funny about this too is that it starts off with all that tension in that room, and then it ends with him outside. And I wonder if that was the journey you wanted to make, from him being sort of in this weird prison of his own making to outside, but unable to escape his own nature. I mean, he's in a lot of ways he's still the same guy that he was at the beginning of the movie.
I mean, that's the big question about the ending of the movie is, do we believe that Dom is going to show up and pick up his grandkid at school? And we didn't know what the answer was. You know, Jude and I had a sort of an answer for ourselves.
Which was?
I can't tell you.
I swear we won't tell anybody.
But,
the guy's here.
But it was, you know, because can you escape your nature? I always said that this movie was about a guy who takes one tiny step towards grace. Just one tiny step after a life of mistakes to finally see something in himself, which is why I called the movie Dom Hemingway, and why ultimately, yes, there's a crime plot, and yes, there's diamonds and things and robberies, but you don't really ever see any of that. There is no robbery. It is not really about that at all. It's really about this deeply flawed guy and watching him get to a point where you're like, don't shoot yourself in the foot anymore, you know. And I said to Jude from the beginning, I'm like, I feel like we talked about when he beats the guy up at the garage, and we talked about how violent that was. And I said, I think we can afford to be as violent as we want to be here, because you're going to win them back, and it will make it much more interesting. We don't have to make you a good guy from the first moment, because you're a mess. You're a mess.
I was wondering for you, Demi, what was it like when you finally saw the movie for the first time? What did you think of it?
I liked it. There are many different states where you get to see a film. The first one is when you read it, and then when you make it, and then when you see it. And not very often you get to see what you expected to see. And it was right there. Everything I imagined when I read it, and everything that I enjoyed so much making it, it was right there with fantastic rhythm. And besides that, you know, I only shot that part of in the south of France, so I didn't know anything else about, you know, how everything ended. And I was very curious to see how the effect of the crash and us flying all over the place was going to look like, because we went to Pinewood Studios in London to do that with a special robot that it gets
It was a robot that built cars that
Yep.
they had just converted to humans. I think Damien was the
To do
first
that.
human being
Yeah.
in the, and it could just repeat the action and spin you around, and so you can do stuff that you can't do with wire work.
And it programs a different choreography for every character. So none of us fly up the same way. It's really, really magical. And then it came out really, really nicely.
For a little movie, it was like, you know, that was our special effect, and it was a lot of work.
Because what I think we maybe talked about this a little bit when I have you at my show before, but you tend to write these movies that are about people who think they're on a mission to do one thing, and it ends up being something entirely different from what they planned, and where their essential nature sort of comes in, the fact that, you know, they can't control their lives. What is that about for you?
Well, I think it's true of all of us. Like we're conditioned by a movie to believe there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and certainly if you're watching a genre picture, you expect certain things. And life isn't like that. In our lives, we sometimes we can't imagine where we are if we think back 2 years ago or 5 years ago in relationships and in whatever you do. And for me, as a writer, I'm interested in trying to surprise myself and to try and go a different direction. That if my instincts in a way are to go right, I'm going to try and go left and see where it goes, because I feel like I have a pretty good handle on a genre picture in the most basic sense of the word. And so knowing that, and knowing I can always come back to it if I need to, whether it works or not, I can't tell you, but at least in my mind, I feel like I could circle back, that it's sometimes interesting to go a different direction, to not have Fontaine beat the shit out of him in the house, to not have this happen, to make it much harder for Dom and his daughter, to do all the things that are sort of against what you think, to have a car accident in the middle of the movie in which a major character dies, and Dom saves someone's life, and you suddenly see this one moment where he is selfless. And that one moment, which he could never have predicted, in a way is the most important moment for him. Because when he runs into her again, she says, "What the hell do you want? What do you want?" And he says, "Money." And she's like, "You're an idiot." And that is interesting to me. And he would have never, so coincidence and making left turns instead of right turns, to me, is interesting as a writer. And I feel like, especially since my movies are not big budget things, there's not huge car chases and not huge explosions, they're character driven, that if you can keep the audience guessing a little bit and not so sure of what's going to happen, you can hopefully keep them entertained.
It's a great place to end. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Richard Shepard and Demi Bashir.
Thank you so much.